There's a truth you don't learn in school, and no one teaches you until you've bled emotionally, until you've poured yourself into loving a woman. The way you thought was right and paid for it with heartbreak. It's the deeper you dive into. Understanding women, their psychology, their patterns, their hidden codes, the harder it becomes to love them the way you once did. Because when you strip away the fantasy, the sweet little lies, and the romantic illusions, you see something raw. You see how much of what they say isn't what they truly mean, how much of what they feel isn't rooted in reality, but in the ebb and flow of impulse. The hunger for validation, in moods that can shift like the wind. When that realization hits, it doesn't make you hate them, but it does change you permanently. You can't love with the same reckless abandon. You can't give your heart with the same blind trust. When you knew less, life was simpler. You took her at her word when she said forever. You believed passion meant permanence. You thought loyalty was the foundation and love was the glue. You were happy in that innocence. But then she left. Maybe she cheated. Maybe she ghosted. Maybe she replaced you like you were a placeholder in her story. You started seeing patterns you'd missed before, catching contradictions in her words, recognizing the difference between what women claim attracts them and what actually does. And it stung, because once you understood, you realized that for most women, love is not a lifelong vow. It's a momentary feeling. It's easily altered by mood, circumstance, or novelty. You began to see how loyalty could vanish overnight, how obsession could turn to boredom in days, how tears could be shed for you while she texted another man before they even dried. And you knew then love was no longer sacred. It had conditions, terms, and an expiration date, whether anyone admitted it or not. And once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. Asterisk, that's when your heart starts building armor. It's not because you want to be cold, but because you finally understand the cost of leaving it unguarded. You start watching people more closely. Stop believing in the magic of words and start judging the weight of actions. You no longer fall for charm. You test consistency. You're not the same man who once thought that love meant giving all of yourself without question. Now you're careful, deliberate, and a little dangerous in your calmness. The innocence is gone, replaced by a sharpened awareness that keeps you from being played twice in the same way. When she used to pull away, you'd chase. Now, you let her drift. Because you've learned that someone who truly values you doesn't need to be hunted, they meet you halfway. When she goes silent, you don't panic, because you know silence is often a test, a game, or simply a sign she's already halfway out the door. You've learned to let the truth reveal itself rather than begging for explanations. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop trying to prove your worth. And that changes everything about how you move. The same knowledge that once made you bitter now becomes your strength. You no longer give women the power to make or break your peace. You no longer crumble at mixed signals or feel the urge to decode every little mood swing. You simply watch, detached, letting patterns reveal themselves. You know now that attraction can be manipulated, interests can fade, promises can break. But you also know that the right woman will never make you question where you stand, and until you find that, you don't cling to anyone. You stand alone, steady, and unshaken. Because the man who has seen through the illusions cannot be enslaved by them again. Asterisk. There's a certain peace that comes when you stop trying to control how people feel about you. You no longer twist yourself into shapes to be liked, approved of, or chosen. You realize that if someone needs you to be less of yourself to fit into their life, then their life is too small for you. That's when your energy changes. You start walking into rooms without the need to be noticed. You no longer chase validation in the eyes of others, because you've learned that real respect isn't something you beg for, it's something your presence demands without a word. In the past, you might have overcompensated when you sensed distance. You would have tried harder, sent more messages, asked more questions, given more attention, hoping to pull her back in. But now, you understand that pulling harder on someone who's already slipping away only makes them resent you faster. So you let go not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You've learned that love cannot be negotiated and interest cannot be forced. Your silence becomes your filter. People who truly care lean in closer. People who are only there for convenience drift away. You begin to notice how much more attractive calmness is than desperation, how much more powerful restraint is than overreaction. Women feel it too. They notice that you don't bite on every emotional bait. You don't react to every shift in tone. You don't collapse when attention fades. You carry yourself as though your life is already full, and that makes them wonder, what could possibly hold your focus so firmly? You've reached a point where you no longer fear losing someone who can walk away. You're more afraid of losing yourself while trying to hold on. That difference changes the way you play the entire game. Asterisk. That's when you start valuing the spaces in your life where nothing is missing. The gym, your work, your hobbies, your circle of real friends, these become your anchor points. Stop putting one person at the center of your universe, because you've seen how dangerous it is to have your entire sense of happiness tied to someone else's mood. You build a life so solid that anyone who steps into it has to rise to meet your standard. And you don't lower it, not for beauty, not for chemistry, not for nostalgia. Your time becomes expensive, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you've filled it with things that actually matter. She can feel it too, the difference between a man who's just waiting for her to respond and a man whose life is already in motion. That kind of energy is magnetic because it says you are complete without her. That makes her curious about what it would take to truly matter to you. You also begin to notice the little manipulations that used to slip past you. Delayed replies meant to test you. Subtle digs meant to shake you. Attention games meant to make you chase. Instead of reacting, you let them pass through you like smoke. You don't need to confront every move, because you've learned that most games lose their power when you refuse to play. That unnerves people who rely on emotional control, because suddenly they can't get a rise out of you. You stand in your own frame. It's unmoved, watching the world bend around you instead of you bending for it. And the deeper you lean into that stillness, the more you realize that the right woman will not be intimidated by it. She will be drawn to it. Asterisk eventually. You reach the point where walking away is not a threat, but a natural choice when something no longer aligns with your peace. You don't slam doors or leave in anger. You simply remove yourself with quiet certainty, knowing that your absence will say everything your words don't need to. That's the final level of self-mastery. When you can leave without needing to be understood, justified, or even acknowledged, you no longer try to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it in the first place. And here's the irony: when you truly let go, that's when people often try to come back. They feel the shift, the emptiness where your energy used to be, and it makes them realize what they lost. But by then, you've already leveled up. You've outgrown the version of yourself that would have settled for half-hearted love or inconsistent presence. Now, you require depth, effort, and reciprocity, not because you're stubborn, but because you've tasted the freedom of living without emotional dependency. Your presence becomes rare, and rarity breeds value. You understand that the most attractive quality a man can have is the ability to be fully content alone. It's not about being cold or unfeeling. It's about being so grounded in who you are that no one's absence can unbalance you. Women respect that. Men admire it. And most importantly, you respect yourself more than ever. This is where you stop chasing and start attracting. Not because you've learned some trick or game, but because you've become the kind of man whose energy cannot be bought, rushed, or faked. You are no longer seeking someone to complete you. You're simply open to someone who can walk beside you without slowing you down. And that changes everything.